Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm so excited to be here. Let us know if this is your first Office Hours, if you've never attended one of these before. And also just let us know where you're coming in from. I see a lot of familiar faces from Tara's community. Some of you here may also never have heard of the What Works Network. So I personally am super excited for today's session. I'm excited for every session, but Tara was the first sort of business investment that I made probably over a decade ago in the very first, I'd say it's probably an iteration of what Works is today, right? It's sort of like, it was called Kickstart Labs. It was $250, I think, back in the day. And I was like, oh my gosh, can I afford to make this massive investment in my business? And just having been a part of that community and kind of what has grown over time, it's been really amazing to I feel like it's paid back in dividends to have taken that chance and joined the community. And so Tara runs a What Works community. It's a network for other business owners. Shannon is the sort of community manager, would you say, the sort of community magic behind the scenes. So they're super amazing content creators. You guys are amazing with your email marketing, the content you produce. You're relentless content creators. I don't know how you do it. And so I'm super excited for both of them to show us behind the scenes of kind of how you manage your whole content engine behind the scenes, your editorial calendar. So thank you both for being here today. And I'd love to hear kind of how you made the switch to Notion too, because I know that you didn't start on Notion. You were an Asana user, and I was too, many, many years ago. So I'd love to hear kind of what prompted this switch and kind of how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let Shannon speak to sort of the nitty gritty of actually making the move. But I'll speak to the strategy, and that will be our theme for today. Is that I will be speaking to strategy, and Shannon will show you all of the magic behind the scenes that she makes happen as she manages and plans these things out. But so as you said, we used to be on Asana like so many other people. And I remember when sort of Asana hit the mainstream, and I think it's very much like what's happening with Notion now, where it's like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? And so, I always thought of myself as I was a creative. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I don't follow task lists and I don't make systems, and I just do my own thing. And I've always thought of myself as very much a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person.
Which probably works fine when you're on your own.
It does. But I haven't been on my own for a long time, and it was becoming problematic. And so we started using Asana way back when to manage things in an effort to curb my entrepreneurial / creative / fly by the seat of my pants spirit, and to make sure that I was on the same page as the rest of the team, and just so that I could kind of see what was happening as other people were stepping in and doing the work. And not only did I resist that first step, but the more and more we got into building systems out, I resisted more and more just the doing of it, the tracking of it, the management of it. I hated it. And in all of that, it really I started to feel like I was a terrible business owner. Not just that I was a terrible business owner, I felt like a bad person, right? Because here I am supposedly leading a team, leading a community where I am supposed to be, I'm supposed to do the things I say that I'm going to do. I'm supposed to be productive. I'm supposed to have my stuff together. And I can't even keep this piece of software from yelling at me that my to-do lists are, overflowing with things that are past their deadline. And so Shannon, bless her heart, through all of this, keeps the ship rolling and, kind of keeps plugging along. But it started to dawn on me more and more what my frustrations with that system were. And my biggest frustration, in addition to it making me feel like crap, was that I couldn't ever combine the big picture, the strategy, the overall long-term planning that I wanted to be doing as the CEO of my company with the nitty-gritty day-to-day tasks. I couldn't ever bridge that gap. It was like strategy was over here, execution was over there. And so when you presented Notion to us and what you had been doing with Notion, it was like, oh my gosh, this might.
Uh-oh. Oh no, come back, Tara.
Oh gosh, it was such an exciting moment.
I know.
That's
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sure she'll come back. This happened a couple times
yeah.
before.
Well, I could pick up from there and just say your exciting, wonderful post about how you were using Notion. And I think it probably struck both of us in different ways. I mean, for Tara, she was saying that was from this big picture. Wait, maybe there's an opportunity here. I could see what's happening from all the different levels. You know, we always had this feeling in Asana, like everything was buried. I mean, first of all, it was very like in a box of how you used it, project management.
3 clicks down too to get to something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then for me, I was like, wow, this feels really creative too. Like, which is also scary. I think that's a kind of an intimidating factor when you're first getting started with Notion is
Absolutely.
just like getting how it works and then sort of seeing like the wide open, Wild West nature of the functionality of it is exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah. It almost works for different brain types. I feel like some people are like, yes, I can see the potential in this. I'm all in. Other people are like, tell me why this is better than a pre-made system. Right?
Yeah. But so it was really fun then for the both of us to start experimenting because she could come at it from, okay, I have all my stuff stored in Evernote and I want to see the big picture. And I could come at it from this really nitty gritty side. How do we make things like linked databases work for us and start to really get into how to systematize the whole thing. Hey, you're back. You're welcome. I was just saying how fun it was for the both of us to then sort of come in and start exploring at it from you from the big picture sort of angle and me from the functionality sort of angle.
Yeah, exactly. And so like just to kind of circle back on where we started, what I realized in all of that was that I was not a bad business owner. I was not an undisciplined person. I was not unproductive. I was not bad at tracking systems. I just was using the wrong software. And as soon as we could take a piece of software and really create what we needed it to be for our different working styles, for our unique use case, then we could have something that actually worked for us and worked with us as opposed to something we were constantly working against.
Amen to that. Yes. Amazing. So on that note, should we sort of open it up and maybe you could also share, given how open-ended Notion is, what was the first, like, was the editorial calendar the first thing that you built, or was it your task management? Like, how did you get started knowing that it's an intimidating system when you first open it up because it is a blank canvas? So how did you kind of get over that hurdle when you first started?
Yeah, I kind of do think the editorial calendar was the place where we started because it's kind of the heart of how we organize our work and our vision for the community and the podcast. So yeah, it felt like it was the place where we could start just A, have a starting spot, and B, start to really blend all the pieces of the platform into one spot. Like we just saw that possibility right away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that to kind of clarify what Works is, we're essentially a media company with a community-based business model. And so for us, having content be the main way that we are organizing our workload and organizing our business makes a ton of sense because everything revolves around the content that we create, whether that's a podcast episode, a long form blog post, an email, or what happens in our community a lot is event announcements and questions that need to be asked and prompts that need to be put up. So that's part of the media that we're creating too. And that's why the editorial calendar, I think, is such a core hub for everything that we do.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm excited to see more. Just I feel like your content across social, within the community, your blog posts, everything feels very resonant and timely, and it's almost like Tara's in my head. There's a feeling to it where you can tell there's been a conversation that you are weaving through all of the different parts of. So wherever people are hearing you, there just feels like this cohesive, like it's been really planned very intentionally, and it just feels very, I don't know, like you've planned that resonance from the ground up, and it's really well executed. So I'm really curious to see what that looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is that where we want to go next?
All right. Let me see here.
Pull back the curtain.
Okay, and I'm in dark mode, so See how we feel about that. Is it showing? There we go.
Awesome.
All right. So let's see. This is our editorial calendar. We look at it. This is kind of our default view. This is a full calendar view, but one thing we love about, I won't go to the different views, but one thing we love about our calendar is all the different views and all the different filtering that we can do. So just to sort of look at a typical week, we have all of our content laid out in the week, and we know whether it's going to be a network post, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a question in the network, whether it's an email. So here it is, and each one of these items in the calendar we can pull up. Let's just say on Fridays we do a weekly check-in. Let's see if we can get that to pull up. And so when we want to work in more detail, I'm sorry, isn't that working for me? I'm sorry, it's not letting me pull that up, you guys.
That's weird.
Yeah. Let me see. There we go. Is it showing for you guys there?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Once we're inside an event inside the calendar, you can see we have kind of common properties for each item. And then what we do is at the bottom of the event, we structure out what needs to happen for that particular type of content. And we can customize. That's what we love about Notion, is so that at the top of each item in the calendar, we can have this very, the similar set of properties. But we love that for each team member or for each style of content or type of content that we're putting out there, we can utilize the features of Notion to have these very customized looks, processes, standard operating procedures at the bottom of each event or item or post. So let me see if I can.
And is that a template? Do you have, I guess, like entry templates for like different types of content?
So I'll give you for instance on that. So each card in here is defined by the properties at the top. So in a sense, that would be the template. But so for instance, if we do the weekly newsletter that goes out to our What Works community members, what I will do, I don't really have it set up as a template that I can duplicate because I'm working within the calendar, but I just duplicate this event week after week after week.
Mm.
So that
you could create an entry, like an actual database entry that's like new, whatever type of event, and could actually have inline templates, I guess, inside of this. If you're always kind of putting the same checkboxes or same things, you could kind of have a template within a template. If
I haven't wrapped my brain around that yet. You're inspiring me. See, this is yeah. So for instance, in our weekly newsletter, we'll have a checklist that just says, okay, Tara does this, I do this, Marty does this. And then in a new template, this is an already completed task or project. This was this week's newsletter. So we have a spot where we'll add in the smart conversations that are going to go in our newsletter. And Tara, I'll let you speak to this, what a game changer this was, to be able to write out our content directly in the content task management.
And then have the comments in line and yeah.
So in the past, I was always juggling between different apps, right? And so I think like a lot of people who are probably on this call, I've used Evernote for years and years and years. I don't open Evernote at all anymore. That was where I would like do my drafty things, and then I'd copy and paste them into wherever they needed to go, and or I'd share a link to an Evernote note with Shannon, and she would copy it and paste it into wherever. And it was always just very like separate and disjointed. Yeah, exactly. And so being able to actually draft things in the same system where we are managing the task and seeing the progress on something, it's changed my life. I mean,
Yeah, I say
you
that a
know,
lot. Life-changing, game changer.
yeah, totally. So like with the podcast, there's four main pieces of content that I have to draft for every podcast episode. There's interview questions, there's interview notes, there's my intro, outro, and ads, and then there's my show notes. And each one of those things can be pages within each.
Uh-oh.
No.
Oh,
Don't leave us like that, Tara.
no.
They're really
Hey, so she could show us. Or yeah, so I believe this is what she would have been talking about, is that so that each week she is writing out the interview questions, she puts the interview notes, intro, outro, ads, and show notes right in here. And I mean, this just is always evolving for us, because now, I mean, it used to be very disparate. Like, okay, I'll do this piece, you do that piece, this piece. Well, now because this lives in here, I have this at my access so that I'm tuned into the content, because in many ways, what's happening on the podcast leads, because she's taping the podcast further out. So that has to be planned further ahead. So, but then I can tap into the actual content of the podcast in order to craft content that's happening in the community. And it's actually given me more agency to do that, because the information is right here in front of us. So I love that.
Amazing.
So, anything else, Tara?
No, I'm sorry that I keep cutting out. I thought I solved my problem, and I guess I didn't.
Oh. Yeah. So I was just thinking this morning, I'm starting to lay out what, January, February, March, first quarter is going to look like content-wise. I focus mainly on the community-based content, but I just thought, how many clicks have I saved myself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Between like not having to jump from app to app, because it used to be like, let's do something in Asana, and then we're going to go work in Google Docs, and then we have our Google Sheet, but I'm going to click 5 times to find out where I store that Google Sheet related to this task. And now we do things where we just like embed a Google Sheet right in line, and we can just work directly in it, and it's just saves so much time.
Oh, yeah. And that's like constant context switching, right? Even though it's the same topic, but it's the different tech and different browsers, and it just gets really...
Exactly. Different tabs, so many tabs. How many clicks, how many tabs have I saved in this process? So, yeah.
We had Rita asked, I'd love to dig deep on Tara's perspective on taking the most of the app, making the most of the app. I also don't use lists and detailed plans. So this is someone I think who could relate to some of your...
Yeah. So I will say, I'm glad you pulled this up, because I saw that comment from Rita, and I want to clarify that I do actually use lists and detailed plans. And I've always been a planner and a list maker. I just didn't play well with the software that I had at my disposal. And so we have our content planned for all of 2020 already, and so it's not that I don't plan ahead. I love planning ahead. It takes so much of the stress out of what we do. But I now have systems that work for me. So like, for instance, this is our editorial calendar, but on my Notion, I use this about 50% of the time. And the other 50% of the time, I use my own personal bullet journal in Notion. So I've got my quarterly goals, my quarter at a glance. I've got my week at a glance with all of my to-dos on every day. I've got what's coming up next week. I've got content ideas that I'm working with for social media or for newsletters. I've got metrics that I'm tracking. I've got programs that I'm filling. I have all of that planned out in my own space in a way that makes sense for my brain and keeps me on task and on track on the things that I care most about for this company. And that's always how my brain has worked. I've just never found a piece of software that actually lets me set it up that way. And so now I'm truly not trying to just sound like a Notion commercial. This is how excited we are about it. I mean, to be able to take what's in my brain, what has always taken up so much bandwidth, and just trying to keep it all organized in my head, because I'm a very much an in my head person, and to actually be able to lay it out on a screen that makes sense to me, that keeps me focused and centered and grounded in the work that I'm doing. just complete game changer.
And I'm curious, when you say your personal Notion space, do you mean your private space within What Works, or do you have your own Notion workspace that you kind of keep separate?
Yeah, good question. No, I mean my private. I have a bullet journal in my private area, and then I just have it because our Notion is. Shannon actually has it very neat here, and maybe I need to collapse a whole bunch of stuff, but our Notion is so big and complicated that I have in our favorites, my favorites, I have my bullet journal.
Oh. What else does she have?
Oh, man. So I don't know if you want to talk about any of the other questions that are, is she back?
What do you have there?
Uh-oh, where did I cut off?
You said, in my favorites, I have my bullet journal.
In my favorites, I have my bullet journal and the editorial calendar, and that's it, because those are the two things I go back and forth between 99% of the time. So I just switch back and forth through those two things. When I realized that there was a favorite section, that was also a game changer.
Section, you're just blowing my mind.
Yeah, active. It's like active projects, the most active, like my weekly planner, which is probably very much like your bullet journal is there. And one thing that people may or may not know, if you are a member of multiple spaces, you can actually embed databases that live in entirely other workspaces. As long as you have permission for them, you can embed them in your own dashboard. So if you wanted to pull data that literally lives in someone else's like team account, you can, again, pull whatever data you want to see that's most helpful for you to see. That kind of blew my mind. Michelle asked, how many of your team members do you keep on your Notion? So I'm assuming that means how many team members are actually have access to this particular space?
Yeah, so there's 5 of us. There's me and Shannon, plus our member experience specialist, Kristen, plus our tech assistant / podcast editor, Marty, and then my husband, Sean, who's the producer for our podcast, in addition to being a co-founder with another company with me. So there's 5 of us that we keep on there.
Sarah asked, is this broadcast about sharing and selling the app? Yes and no. Like, these Notion office hours are about showing what Notion can do and how you can use the product. We bring on different guests every week to show kind of niche use cases. And sometimes we're very general in that use case. Sometimes we go very, very specific. Today, we're focused on editorial calendar inside of Notion. So of course, inevitably, we're talking with people who are super fans of Notion because they love what it's doing for their business. So I'm also not paid by Notion. I am literally just a lover of the product, and I'm so excited about what it has done for my business. So I just shout it from the rooftops, and I love facilitating these sessions. So Amy asked, is there a different content calendar for marketing / external facing stuff, or and another for content inside the network, or is it all in one place?
It is all in one place.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. As I'm still in the process of really making the most of the external stuff in our editorial calendar. So at this point, like, social media still lives in my head, and it can, because I'm the only person who touches it. But my goal through next year is to get everything that we produce into this calendar. So our main external thing that's in our editorial calendar is our weekly public newsletter. So we have a weekly private newsletter and a weekly public newsletter. Both of those things live in the same editorial calendar because all of the content we create is related. So whether it's the podcast or it's a newsletter or it's content that is going into our community, all of those things are on the same theme and are working toward the same purpose.
Love that. Kimberly said, I have a horrible time with Kanban boards. Do you use those?
I do, but not like Kanban boards. So in my bullet journal, I have I'll have a month. I'll have the 3 months of the quarter on boards, and I'll have like big picture tasks underneath of them, or I'll have events in my quarter at a glance that I want to just keep my eye on. Like, oh yeah, Tara, remember that Thanksgiving is in November. Like, that's on a Kanban board, but I don't use it as a productivity tool.
Right. And I think that's, again, the beauty of the way you can organize the Kanban boards and even organize the calendar. Like, you can organize by, choose a different date. So you could actually have multiple dates on your events here. If it was like the creation date and the published date, you could actually have that same information in the same post and just show the one that you want to see. Kanbans you can organize pretty much as long as you've got a tag or a multi-select property, you can organize it not just by status, but by topic, category, whatever. There's so many different ways you can organize your content.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a board. Like I have to say, I'm with Tara that I don't use boards as a way to measure, to track productivity. It's just not how my brain works. But it is good for seeing things like, okay, this is a board set up by the assignee, whoever is responsible for the task. So it just gives a sense. I mean, a person could go in and look for themselves, or from a big picture perspective, you kind of could see what's on everybody's plate. So I like it from that perspective. This isn't how we really manage tasks in here, but a person could if they wanted to.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's a great point. Like if you do work with the team, just being able to at a glance see like, okay, what's Kristen working on? What's Shannon working on? Just very quickly. Almost
exactly.
all teams that I work with, I create a dashboard for each team member, and then each team member will have their own tasks at the top, their own things that they're responsible for. And so if someone is a team lead, they could actually have a board that shows a Kanban by team member. So
Yeah.
everyone can kind of have the default view within Notion that is their most preferred view, whether it's your bullet journal, whether it's your editorial calendar. So there's a lot of options to make sure that each team member kind of feels like, oh, this is the information that's most helpful for my brain to see at this moment.
Yeah, so we do have filtered views. We've, created filtered views for each team member so that, this is Kristen's list of everything that's coming up all the way so far through March. She can go in and look. I think we've set up filters. I don't know if it's here or somewhere else where you can even see it like what's happening today versus all of time. So
so it doesn't feel like the big
very daunting, but you can then just add another filter that says we'll use our status, everything. That's like either by date, filter it to today's date, or another thing we do is filter things so that completed tasks disappear from the view.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that by status, we're not seeing everything from all time, but just from today forward. Yeah.
Someone was asking about how to actually embed Google Docs. You can copy paste the link of a Google Doc and it will ask you if you want to embed it. You can use the embed block feature where it's like add new, embed Google Docs. So it's very, very easy to pull in other documents that live elsewhere. Even if you're pasting in a YouTube video, it'll ask you to embed it. So it's very, very easy to work with content that does live elsewhere. Nicole asked, this question might be more applicable to Marie, but not sure. Can Notion be used for client work that's shared with the client? I'm a coach and wondering if I can share sections with the client's prep forms. 100% yes, I do all of my client management inside of Notion. Love it so much. And I create shared spaces for each client. I also have some clients that have their own Notion workspace that they've given me access to. So definitely, and we will have a whole session that's specifically on client management. I don't know if your team actually does this. I feel like you're not necessarily doing quite as much in terms of managing clients versus content. So I don't know if that's as applicable for.
No, the main thing that we manage client-wise through Notion is like our mastermind enrollment. So, we have our main product that is the network. And for that, most of the management that we do in Notion is the editorial calendar. But then we offer small groups, and we need to be able to build out processes and trackers, because it's not all a direct sales process. It's not just click a buy now button and then you're in. It's talk to Tara, or it's, submit your inquiry, give us more information, talk to Tara, agree to this, buy
contract
here.
terms. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we manage all of that in Notion that way. But we are using client. So I have a second company with my husband that's a podcast production agency. And we are starting to build out client dashboards for that. So he's going to be very interested in that particular office hours, Marie.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so happy to nerd out about that stuff. That's great. Okay, I'm going to dip into the actual ask a question areas to see what's been popping up, if that's
cool. Do you mind if I say something about emojis?
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Let's go
Shannon,
there.
Can you pull up the list view, or like the table view?
Yes.
Because this is such a silly feature that has totally made me so happy and feel so organized. But for every entry in this database, we can add an icon, and the icons are just emojis. And what we have done is essentially create a convention for each type of event or entry in the calendar that we have. So for instance, the podcast episodes where I spend a huge chunk of my week all have little headphones at the front of them, which means I can be looking at our editorial calendar, the whole thing, and I can immediately pick out each of the podcast episodes just because they have those little headphones. Or the newsletters. I said we run 2 newsletters per week, a private one and a public one. They've got the little email envelope with the heart on it. And so again, I can see those newsletters at a glance and know, okay, those are the things my week runs by.
No.
Oh no! It's always while she's got something.
I know. Nugget of wisdom.
Tool.
Oh, you're back.
Oh yeah.
I lost you for a second.
Yeah. So just to say that the emojis really have become a key organizational tool for me, and so much so that I'm starting to utilize them that way in other things as well. So like even on my iCal, where I manage all of my appointments on my computer, I'm starting to utilize emojis for understanding my appointment schedule better at a glance as well.
Yeah. And that's another case too, I think, for creating those database entry templates, because I even have a database template for What Works posts. So if I'm posting something to the What Works network, the What Works little icon is set to be the default, and then the source is put as the What Works network. So it just reduces those like 3 clicks. So if you always have a newsletter that you want to have that icon there, you want to have a status, and you want to have a whatever by default, build that into a template, and then you just say new newsletter, and all of those properties are already kind of ready for you to play with.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh no.
Uh-oh. At least it wasn't me this time.
Okay, so Lisa did ask, I think we covered that about, do people who do client work use Notion for project management? How do the clients interact with Notion, or is this just something awesome for organizing your team? Lisa, yes, I do invite my clients in. I give them full editing privileges. I would not do that until the workspace was totally set up and beautiful and ready. So I would not be expecting them to be moving things around and knowing how to kind of manage things. There's a lot of onboarding and sort of a little bit of training required. I leave little call out notes to kind of explain how to do things. And so again, we'll go into more detail about that in a future office hours, but I give clients full sharing permission. It would be great to see in the near future a configuration with team, different access rights, guests, and viewers. I imagine on your team too, everybody has probably the same access. Everybody can see everything that's
Yeah. Anything that is more private, I keep in my private space. I think Shannon does the same thing.
Yeah.
We do have one shared space. Shannon and I have a weekly standing meeting where we do, kind of the big picture planning. And sometimes we do talk about like performance issues or financial issues that maybe isn't appropriate for the whole team to have access to. And so we have a separate little space. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but it's shared between her and I and Sean, who are the people that attend those meetings. And we keep all of our agendas in that space that's separate. So there is one place where we have different levels of access.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of time to kind of wrap your head around how the sharing works. And I'm often using the like a private browsing window just to test, like, just making sure
smart.
This page isn't public, right? Like, what does this look like for a stranger?
Right.
Yeah.
I will say we actually use public pages quite a bit. I have built out a lot of sales messaging in Notion and actually built out sales pages in Notion to share with people, which was great because another thing that we could do was, so similar to how I would build out a sales page like in our WordPress website and then embed a type form, a form to get people to apply and sign up. I can do the exact same thing in Notion. And even though I'm really good at WordPress, it takes me way less time to build a sales page in Notion. But the functionality is there as well. So like, I wouldn't do that maybe for a public launch, but for internal sales, makes a lot of sense for us to just keep everything really streamlined.
Yeah, I've done the same thing with like client proposals. So I'm like, oh, here's
Mm.
a proposal, and inside that proposal, I have embedded case studies. I can
Ooh.
embed tech
Ooh.
tools, and then I can just spin up. It's a template. I say new proposal. It spits out a new document that's like, hey, client. I switch it all up. It's the
Why am I
best.
doing proposals in Pages, Marie?
Oh, Tara, life-changing templates, proposals. It's so good. Like that has totally cut down the time of having a conversation with someone. It's kind of a productized service, right? It's like a standard way that I work. The price is all there. The sort of process is
Right.
all outlined. Send them the links, change out the name, and
Well,
then
yeah, that's what we do for Yellow House Media, and I make like a Loom video. I could just embed that all in the
yes,
same. Marie, changing my life
yes,
again.
yeah. Yeah, I'm running an experiment right now where I'm delivering a course on Notion. And so there's like welcome Loom video is in there. All the modules I can drag in a gallery format. So it's an experiment, but you can do it.
We can do that for our onboarding for the masterminds. Uh-oh, did she freeze again?
She did. She's not hearing about how exciting.
Oh, well, we have great ideas.
Marie, I'm going to need a debrief on that, by the way, for the podcast for January. So
Oh yeah, let's
I'll
go
get with
there.
you
Let's
on
do
that.
it. Let's do it. Yeah. What you were saying?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
About onboarding. Like, were you saying you already do this, or you want to do this for the onboarding?
Well, I was saying for our mastermind programs, we do set up like a welcome kit, and that's a Loom video embedded in it. I'm just seeing we could just keep evolving it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'd like to hear how people export their writing from Notion onto other platforms, blogging, writing, ebooks, etc. I'm curious about that too, because I do write my blog posts in Notion now, and then I export it as Markdown, and then Ben would import into WordPress because he's got whatever. He's techie. He knows how to that's like a one-click thing for him to do. I wouldn't know how to do that. But do you write your blog posts?
Yeah, I just copy and paste. It's been the copy and paste has been very clean. There isn't any extra junk that gets copied and pasted over, like can happen with Microsoft Word or with Google Docs. So copy and paste has been huge. I write all of my Instagram captions, and I do long form Instagram. So I write all of that in Notion, and what I do is copy it on my laptop where I've written it, and then I paste it on my phone, because if you're hooked up to the same network, you share your copy and paste function, which is awesome. So that has been like such a time saver. It's also been really helpful creatively too.
I love that you mentioned this, because someone just had a question too about, can Notion work with IG posts, pictures, and draft verbiage? So what is your workflow?
I started fresh page in my bullet journal for social media, write my caption out. It's essentially, I write mini essays and micro essays for Instagram. I don't manage the photos in there. It tends to be a little bit more on the fly. But I will write the essay in there. I'll put the hashtags in there and then copy it directly into my phone. Like I said, using the shared copy and paste. One thing that I would love to see Notion do differently is allow me to actually highlight and copy a whole page on the app on my phone. I can't do that, but I can do it on my desktop, and then use that shared copy paste function to be able to get it onto Instagram in seconds.
Is that shared copy and paste function part of the app, or
no? It's an OS. It's an OS iOS thing. So you can't do it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Shannon. One other tip, that if people have heard me mention Text Expander, I have a whole set of saved Text Expander snippets. So if I'm talking about something like relating to permaculture or Notion or whatever, I can just type in ;no on my Instagram post, and that's going to spit out 20 different hashtags if I wanted to. So that's one way you can, if you already have Text Expander, that might be helpful. Someone asked, have you already said which Notion plan you're on? I think I'm on the business plan, it's the middle tier. I think you guys are probably on that same one. It's basically personal, the free, the personal, and the business one. And I think there's like a enterprise or pro, but yeah, I think it ends up being what, $8 per team member or something like that. Or
yeah, I think I wonder if you might be grandfathered in at a lower price. I think we're at $49 a month is our subscription, I think.
Per team member.
And then
you know better.
I don't know. I was in there because someone wanted our referral link, and then I realized that we actually hadn't paid for it in a couple of months, which was great.
Someone asked, can we see a how to start? What's the first thing that needs to be done? Robin, we do have a building from scratch Notion office hours in the past. So if you click on Notion's name in Crowdcast, you can look at all of our old events. There's also a great course, Notion Made Simple. I've got a course, Notion Mastery, that's a little more on the advanced side. That will be coming out as well. But otherwise, there's lots of YouTube videos out there. Jonathan posted a link, Notion from scratch. So that one will definitely help you if you're just trying to wrap your head around it, because I know it can be a lot when you're first getting started. Like when I ran my webinar in August, it was called Getting Started with Notion. And I did not realize it was not a getting started with Notion. It was like, here's everything you could ever do with Notion. And I didn't realize how advanced some of those use cases were. So I was like, ooh, actually need to take a step back and do a bit of a 101, because that might have been a bit too intense. So
and it is a learning curve to figure it out. But then once you figure things out, you're like, this is genius.
I just think it's worth the investment. I was so motivated to unify all of my information that I had to make the case to Ben that we should move all of our stuff off of Asana. So I had to make sure that I could recreate what we were doing in Asana in Notion first, to be like, look how easy it would be to just move over. Look, I already made it for you. So I was very, very motivated to do that. But it took some time to wrap my head around the database functionality and all that. So, but it's worth it, I promise.
Yeah. And we built our tasks databases based on a lot of what you talked about in your original one.
The master.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the way that we do it, it's changed so much. I mean, gosh, even 3 months ago, like every few months, I feel like my setup really levels up, because you just get to know what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think having a master task database, and was it Robin that asked? There's an article I've referenced probably almost on every office hours, which is the PARA method of organizing by Tiago Forte. I can include a link here. I think if you're just getting started and you're someone that doesn't see yourself as being very organized, or you just don't know how to kind of think of the way to structure your files, I think the PARA method is really, really helpful. It stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives. And the idea is like any piece of information can be in one of those categories. It provides a really, really easy and simple structure to put your stuff into order. So I might recommend starting there. That totally influenced my Notion setup and kind of how I organize things. So I've got my projects, I've got areas of my life and business. I can refine those areas by just show me the business areas, just show me the personal areas, and then a master task database that connects to each of those.
I wish I could just hang out in your Notion space.
We could do that. Like, that's definitely a thing that twist my arm.
I think the other thing that people really worry about is trying to get it right, right out of the gate. And like on our podcast, just on Tuesday, Ashley Gartland said something about version 1.0 is good enough to start.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, it's tempting, I think, to like, should I set it up this way? Should I set it up that way? Should I do this other? Just try one, and then make it better, and then make it better, and then make it better. And sometimes maybe you want to start from scratch because you realize something completely new. But like with the bullet journal that I've referenced a couple of times, I started a version of it earlier in the year. It was good. It was great. I went on an extended vacation and forgot about it. It came back, had someone remind me about it, and built it again. And version 2.0 is amazing.
Right? Imagine version 3 is just going to be next level, right? It's
next level.
Well, and can I share screens again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just want to see. Let's see. I got knocked off somehow. So, I'm sure due to operator error.
Yeah. Internet tech issues today.
Yeah. Okay. So just to Tara's point, like, she said, wow, mine looks really clean over here in the left-hand side. But that is because we do have this, I have this collapsed. We have these different knowledge bases. We have one that's kind of really specific to our network. We have one that's really specific to podcast, and then one that's kind of team overarching, et cetera. And to Tara's point, when we first started, I was like, oh my God, you can navigate the left hand, everything's nested, you can see it. And then it grew, and then it grew, and it grew some more. And now I'm like, it would take me all day to figure out just how to find the editorial calendar. So based on something you talked about with your dashboards, Marie, I don't know if I'm doing exactly what you did, but it inspired me to start to organize this landing page to be the place where I can go, because now I have even more hierarchy. We were excited when we were working in the left-hand nav, and we had just some nesting that made things really easy to find. And then we added the icons, beautiful to navigate. And now we've started to like really divvy it up. I have been, and we even had a conversation around, how are you getting around? Because Tara loves search. Sean was really big in the left-hand nav, and I was getting lost. So I said, well, I'm going to organize this space so that we can just really quickly understand where to find the different pieces. We can use headings, and we can use the colored background and the emojis to kind of keep adding hierarchy that makes things as easy as possible to find.
Yeah. And to Tara's last point too, I think one of the things that took me a long time to wrap my head around, and I think is kind of overlooked and most people don't realize, is you often don't need to rebuild. It's just so easy to move data around. Mm-hmm. So even if you decided you wanted all of those to be entries in a database, you can add a database onto this page and drag them all in. And so you can move stuff around so quickly and easily. So it takes seconds to change your mind about things, and you don't really need to rebuild. So once you started, you've got a lot to work with.
Well, and then that sort of like speaks to your whole mindset about how you're working, right? Like, and in a chicken or an egg sort of situation, it supports you being able to be creative that way.
Exactly.
Right. And it's a creative platform, so you can think creatively, and you're not bound by, when we first started with Asana, I was newer to this online digital world and on online project management like that. I was from an old school sort of corporate background, and Asana was the sun and the moon for me.
Yeah.
I just loved it so much. It was just wonderful. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was in such a box. A very strict, a wonderful, very effective and very productive, and I can see its use cases for different people. But now I feel like this is just so much more open.
It's like sometimes Asana is a great task manager, right? Like it's good at what that is. But similar to Tara, I just found like the bigger picture planning, it didn't leave any room for that kind of organic, messy thinking. And even like when I'm taking a course, I wanted to like track what I'm learning in that course and make notes about it. And like Evernote wasn't quite that. Like, what if I wanted to make a to-do that connected? Like everything was just feeling really disjointed. So the blessing and curse, or, it's sort of like the amazing thing about Notion is how open-ended it is. And that's also what is most difficult about it, that you have to make your own boxes. And if you've never done that kind of work, if you're not necessarily a systems thinker, that can be really hard for people to do. So I think having some starting points and just seeing examples of like, what does this look like for a small team? What does this look like for a solopreneur? I think is really helpful just to see what's possible and like pick and choose what works, right? Notion's got tons of pre-made templates you can spin up into your account, even if you just want to play with that data and move it around.
I think that's the first thing I did was you had shared a template that was your like private journal. And I don't use that at all today, but being able to go into that template and just see how things worked, how you had things set up, and to see how I might shift something, and to see that flexibility in action was where I started from. That was like my launch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I share with people, here's what my template looked like 8 months ago. Here's what it looks like now. And I've got all these crazy database properties and relations, and I can connect, my week to my notes and to my thoughts, and everything's a lot more integrated. But it didn't start that way. It took a lot of playing and dabbling and whatever. So I think you got to resist the urge to want to get that like perfect ultimate setup. And I think it requires some play, and even like watching videos about it, learning about it, it's one thing, but you really kind of have to get your hands dirty and drag the blocks around and not be afraid to kind of break things.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So let's take a peek and see if any other questions came in that we could answer that are sort of relevant to your particular setup. So someone asked if you can organize views by emojis. Unfortunately, I don't think you can. You can organize by type. And so if the type is kind of connected to the emoji, that might be one sort of workaround for that.
Yeah, that's essentially what we do. We've got the headphones that visually shows us this is a podcast, and then it has a type that is podcast in the database. And then I have a filter that I use so that I see only podcast episodes. So it looks like it's filtered by emoji, but really it's filtered by type, or by tag, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, someone said, will you discuss Notion 3.0 when it drops and what we can expect? I think people probably assume that I am a Notion employee. I'm not. I'm connected to the team. I can ask them those kind of questions, but I don't necessarily know when Notion 3.0 is dropping. I know they've been really focused on their API and also performance issues. There was some lagging and that sort of thing. So I know that they went pretty hard on that. And I think they just released an update yesterday that they're rolling out. So you should notice some serious performance improvements, but I do not know when that amazing timeline view is coming out. Have you guys seen that little sneak peek that they showed where there's like a new database timeline view that looks like a Gantt chart?
No, but that sounds very exciting.
I get it. Whew, getting sweaty. Yeah.
John will be thrilled.
Yeah, very exciting. Someone asked, can we get certified in Notion? And if so, will there be different levels? So Notion does have a partners program you can apply for, I believe. I think there's 5 of us at the moment that are considered Notion partners. These are people that are actively consulting with Notion. So it is a thing. I actually don't know what their sort of process is to, like, what kind of questions they ask you, but they probably just want to make sure you're fairly competent with the product and whatnot. Is anyone using Notion to build knowledge bases and wikis? How about web pages? Has anyone built a website with Notion? Is it possible? Yes, there's actually a whole article on how to post your blogs, like post Notion as a blog. Somebody wrote a whole how-to about this. I will grab that link for you and post it in the replay. But it looked like you guys had your own sort of company home, company wiki, right, that you had displayed there. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually probably the easiest place to start when you're just getting started with Notion, is like creating a knowledge base for your company. How do we work? What's our branding style guides, mission, vision, values? That stuff I think is kind of the easiest starting point. Are you doing a crowdcast for Notion 3.0 with a Notion employee? We can do that. There's lots of Notion team, I'm sure, would be very willing to come on and ask any or answer any questions. We did that. I think our first or second session was with Camille from marketing, who answered all sorts of questions. So, and I'm just going to check the sidebar to see if any other question, did you guys notice any recent questions that pop up while we were chatting that you wanted to address or answer? Mike, we will definitely include any links that we referenced. We'll include in the replay. I don't know if you guys have any templates. Like, is there a template for your editorial calendar that you share or anything like that?
I have a template. Tara had mentioned earlier that we, in our shared space, we share our our weekly meeting notes. So I have a template there, and so that it auto-populates that we're going to talk about. We have top level things we're going to talk about. We have a revenue section. We have any additional things we need to do. And then each person in the meeting gets a section to kind of round robin what they want to talk about. So yeah, that's a place where we use templates.
Karen asked, do you manage your own personal to-dos or projects within Notion too? Is it easy to separate them? I think, Tara, you had sort of addressed that a little bit with yours, where you kind of manage your own in your private space.
Mm-hmm.
for me, all of my business and personal stuff is together. I like, that's just how my brain works. Like, I'm just a pretty, solo person. So like the things that I need to do in the day, I just want to know what I need to do Wednesday. So for me, it's all together, but you absolutely can separate them in so many different ways. So I have some dashboards that have every single client to do separated by client in one dashboard. And then at the very top, I just have my own personal tasks. So it's like, I can see all of it if I want, or I can just have my like personal dashboards and refine that only by things that are not marked as client project. So there's like a million and one probably different ways that you could do that. And I think that depends on personal preference of like, do you want to see all of the tasks? Do you want to see client only? So I have project views that are like, just show me everything that's not a client project. So just show me everything that's like an internal okie dokie project. I can see that if I want to see that. So it really depends how your brain works, how you want to see that. If you like to see it more separate, if you like to see it together. I still believe in doing like a central master task database that has all of your tasks in there. And then that way you can refine that database view wherever you want to see it.
Yeah, we have, if I may just share, this isn't about personal to-dos per se, but for our team, we've created a master task list. And this was based on some of what you had taught in or wrote about earlier. So each person on our team can go in and take a personalized look at what's on their plate. And we're sort of using two main databases in here. This will include the editorial calendar to-dos, and we've also created a master task list for tasks that fall outside of the editorial, outside of content per se. So I'll just, for example, this is mine. Let's see. So I have my editorial calendar, which this is everything happening, but I can also sort it by today. And so this is, looks crazy because it's everything from all time. But then we have other tasks as well. So this would be, for me, things that relate to, but it's filtered so that I could look at everybody, what everybody has going on. I mean, you could create so many different filtered views, but this lets me know what I have going on that relates to customer service issues or very nitty gritty things in outreach to people and things like that. And I believe it was Karen's point. I also do keep this hasn't, it's interesting, Marie, you said that you keep your personal and business things together. For me, this hasn't really stuck. My personal to-dos haven't really stuck for me to do in here, but I have built out a way to do that, to see that in here and to be able to see it as a calendar or as a table database, et cetera, et cetera. So then what I love about this is the link that we put a project tag on here. So if for the Build Your Brand virtual conference, these things are all tagged with that. When I'm in the Build Your Brand virtual conference project, then I see only the tasks that relate to that project in that project. So just a little bit.
That. Yeah, I just love that flexibility to just show me the one thing, because I don't want to see every 100 things I've ever assigned to myself.
Yep.
And I noticed you have a lot of 2020 dates in there too. I know we didn't really talk about necessarily like your strategic planning process of like, how do you in this process of like, you've got lots of ideas, how do you actually come up with that plan for future content in such distance in the future? How do you actually do that?
Should I share 2020 year at a glance?
Yeah, that's fine. So we start by figuring out, so every month our editorial calendar is organized by a particular theme. So for instance, January is all about project management. February is going to be on leadership. March is going to be on brand building. A few weeks back, we sat down at our Friday meeting and planned out all of 2020 from a top level theme perspective. That then gets translated into podcast episodes. So I'll think about what are the 4 or 5 stories that I want to tell for that topic. And then once I have an idea of that, I go out and find guests who can help me tell that story. So like with project management, the question I ask myself is, who do I know who is regularly managing huge projects? So we're going to have on someone who works as a book coach and editor talk about how she manages someone through the process of writing a book. We're going to have on an event planner talk about how he manages clients building out conferences, from agendas to speakers to, the equipment and the tech and the vendors and all of that. And so they're going to talk about that. That then gets translated into prompts and questions for our community. We ask for or we solicit contributions on that topic. So people can write our weekly newsletter. And so, do you have a project management tip or, a victory with your project management that you really want to share? Write our newsletter that week. And so that gets translated that way. And then all of our events are based around those topics as well. So it starts with thinking like, what do we want to talk about each month of the year? How are we going to guide that conversation through the podcast? And then how does that trickle down into specific conversations and events that we want to have in our community?
I love that. And someone had a question about what Kanban boards are. And so I think this is such a great illustration of not using a Kanban in a traditional sense, but being able to, it's basically being able to, refine a view by tags. And so you've got like a tag that's January. So just being able to see information in this format, that's not a calendar format necessarily, I think is really, really helpful.
Yeah. And then this is very similar so I built this. So this is the way my brain works. Yeah. This is very similar to how I plan my like quarterly goals and my quarterly or my quarter at a glance too. So for quarterly goals, I'll have like 3 top level goals. And then just like there, it says project management and the prompt and like some of the people's names that I'm considering for that month. I have individual tasks or individual projects that need to be completed to move that goal forward. So that's the goals for the quarter. Then the quarter at a glance is month by month, very similar to this, but it's more like, what are the events that I have coming? Am I speaking at a conference? Are there vacations happening that month? Is there a holiday? Is there an enrollment or like a big community project that we're working on? That goes into that, and it looks exactly the same as this.
Love it. Yeah, I really like that format for thinking through. Like, I feel like that really simplifies it, at least in my brain, of just, yeah, okay, when you break it down like this of what conversations do I want to be a part of over the next month, I think it starts to get easier to start plugging some of those, random ideas that live over here. I'm like, oh, actually, I could like talk about that in February, I think it just gives it a great structure.
Yeah.
Well, what I love about this is it gives agency to everybody on the team too, to know what's happening, like to have a view out the whole year. So if someone comes to me and says, I'd really love to be in the newsletter, and they have something they want to say, I can look out over the year too and say, what, that might be perfect for Lonely at the Top, over in May. That might be a great time. So it gives all of us the power to just tune into what's going to be happening and to just keep working.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really fun. I think just to see the different ways that teams work together, the different ways people have their different setups. Like you'll see if you look at any of the other past office hours, people's setups look wildly different, wildly different, right? How people manage their projects, whether people are managing internal, external projects. So I just think it's really helpful to kind of see what's working for other people, right?
Yeah, totally. I obviously believe very strongly in that. I will also say that for me, the way this kind of moves from big picture planning into the editorial calendar is also not like with the perfectionist, I've got to get it right the first time thing. So like I'll start booking interviews. I have interviews booked into February and March for next year right now. I don't know what I'm going to title those episodes. I don't know exactly, I don't worry about that. But what I do is sort of start to zhuzh the editorial calendar around that theme. So the podcast episodes, as they get added, they'll have the monthly theme at the beginning of them, and then they just have the person's name. And I don't have to worry about the details yet, but the rest of the team can start to see, oh, I get it. I see how this is trickling out. And then we can start building in. So it allows us to work so much further ahead and so much more on the same page, as to what Shannon was saying earlier, without having to feel like we have to get all the details done for it to be planned.
Love that.
And it saves on meeting time.
Yes.
You don't have to have a whole meeting about the December editorial, because now I know where to find all the podcast episodes, and I can start to craft, shape something, a 1.0 version of what that might look like in the community. And then we can touch base, but we didn't have to have a whole meeting about it.
And or emails. I mean, the reduction of emails after adding my clients to this space, and like, oh, I can edit right in the document. Like just, yeah, a tenth of the email that I used to get, for sure. I know there's still some questions that have popped in. I don't know if you guys still have time, or should we address a couple? If you have to go, it's totally cool.
I am good for a little while yet.
Me too.
I think this is a good thing to address, because Karen asked, she said, I'm super visual. This is less visually appealing and more visually overwhelming than, say, Trello. Did you folks have this response? Does it get easier? And again, I just want to reiterate, Karen, like, my space looks very, very different than this. I prefer light mode. I have cover images at the top. I have the way I've designed certain columns, and I use the gallery view a lot that has a lot of cover images. That works for me. And again, I'm not working with multiple team members, so I maybe don't have as many pages, or my pages don't look as complex. So it might feel really busy, I think, as an outsider looking in, but as you guys have said, like, for yourselves internally, this gives you a structure to work with, and if it's working for the team, awesome. But you can have a super minimal, super stripped down view. If you prefer Trello views, you get to have Trello views, and you can make them look just like Trello, but you also have the option to kind of layer in other visual elements. So it's like you can have a Trello board that lives inside a page that might have additional elements, but you get to choose. If you want it to be super simple, go super simple. If you want to go nuts and have like 800 databases, well, maybe performance issues there, but let's say maybe 8 databases all nested inside a page, you can totally do that. And again, that's just the beauty. Everyone's setup looks wildly different. And so if this feels overwhelming, check out some of the really simple templates that, like Notion's built-in sort of template gallery, really, really simple templates to start with, so that it doesn't have to be complex and visually overwhelming. I don't know if you guys have anything to add about that.
No.
Yeah. Said it just right.
There will be a replay. Someone asked about, we covered Kanban boards, I think. Someone was asking about templates for certain methodologies, getting things done, Blue Ocean content. Maria does have a getting things done template that is linked in there. And again, we'll send that out in the replay. I definitely have a couple templates I'd be happy to share as well. Haley asked, what's your workflow for planning ahead? For example, content for Q1 2020 within Notion. Do you plan separately and then drop the pieces in the calendar once that's done? I think we sort of covered that.
Yeah, I'll just say that we do not plan separately. All of the planning happens in Notion, other than like just talking it out brainstorming wise. But even as we're talking it out and brainstorming, we all have Notion open. And we're like, okay, here's this, here's that, here's that. We might come back and reorganize it, but we're building out the skeleton of it as we're brainstorming right in here. And yeah, like I said, we've got kind of some of these bigger picture spaces where we are planning way far and ahead with very little detail. But then as we, kind of quarter by quarter, I tend to work about 3 months ahead with the podcast. That makes me very happy. So that's when things sort of start coming out of the lack of detail planning piece and into the editorial calendar. And then the details just sort of get added little bit by little bit as we get closer and closer as those conversations happen. And so it all really kind of just flows through the system that we've created here.
Cool. April asked, can you show your meeting agenda template?
Sure. Let's see. It's very simple. It's not overly complex, but I'm happy to share it. Let's see. Guessing this one might have a little more detail. Yes, we meet every Friday at Whole Foods in Lancaster. If you're in town,
Come crash our party.
we have an in real life meeting, which is just delightful. So very simple, but here's a place where we have a cover, I have a cover picture, we have a little icon, just the date, who's coming to this meeting. And then we've divided it into top line priorities. And that's what we'll spend the majority of our time. Like that has to get discussed that week. That's going to move the ball forward for all of us as a team. Revenue, we may or may not have something to dive into that if we have something specific for a team member here. And then sometimes we'll be like, you know what I was thinking about? We call that the bonus brainstorms.
I like that.
Yeah. So, and we may flesh that out, or we might just put something there as kind of like a parking lot. Let's talk about this next time. And then as team members bring up this is sort of our round robin section. And then we just kind of, because especially I probably use this section more than others because like I said, I'm a people person, processor, worked in a corporate setting for a long time, and I'm used to like hashing things out all through the week. And I've learned to save things for the meeting. And so this is where I do, and it's a lot of nitty gritty stuff that we can just bang out, which does save time. It's a much more efficient workflow than like knocking on the door all day in Slack, you know?
Yeah.
So this has helped me to have a place, a repository where I can just throw things in. And then if anything else comes up, then we just throw that down here.
To piggyback on this, something that I've seen work for some clients is if you notice that you have like a brain dump or you know, just things that you need to do often that like feel messy but don't have a place. For one of my clients, we made a brain dump database and we embed it so that anytime she makes a new meeting, there's an embedded brain dump database at the bottom. So any of these thoughts, if you're like, oh, that's actionable, you could like drag that into your database and then even assign it a date. Like, I want to review this next month so that things don't kind of get buried in a document like this that you're like, oh, there was a really amazing nugget there. I want to remember that. So you can kind of mix your databases with your pages to kind of give them a bit more action.
Yeah. And Terry asked, can assignments be made in the meeting context with due dates? Oh, and Tara's answering.
You know me, chatting away.
Yeah, so fast. I'm like, let me get my hands on the keyboard. So yeah, we will not do formal tasks from it. What we do is at mentions. So Tara will say, oh yeah, mention me so that I know to go back to that. And sometimes we can do due dates in here too, if it's real simple. A lot of times I'll go back on Monday after the Friday meeting and just sort of scan through this and see what things need to be sort of taken to the next level. Do they need to go into the editorial calendar? Do they need to go into the task management database? You know, what do I need to create a whole new project for something that we talked about? So.
And I want to give you guys a really quick sneak peek of what another client is doing, because they store everything. When they have a video, when they have a meeting, can you guys see my screen here?
Yeah.
So like this is Egghead, and they store like no matter which team member, if they ever have a meeting with someone, like here's one where Maggie and I sat down and had a discussion. And so like you can see they link up a lot of different fields, like who collaborated on it, what's the project, what's the media URL, transcript URL, Zoom URL, notes, workshop events, you know, and then they add a little summary too at the top of like what actually happened during this call. So you can see some of these are more fleshed out than others. Madison and Zach get on a call to talk about the feedback. So they go pretty deep. And then takeaway notes, you know, like they go pretty deep into some of their, and so they do this with videos, they do this with workshops, they do this with meetings, events. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I love seeing somebody else's notion.
And I can show you what, this is a project where we're actually creating everybody's different dashboards. But so, for example, here's what Maggie's dashboard looks like. She's got her quick links at the top, quick notes, and then she sees just her tasks in this really simplified today, tomorrow, next, and later. That's it.
Love it.
That's a master task database. So she can see it in this weekly flow. She can see any projects that she's actively a part of, any workshops that she's responsible for. So you can see it looks very different. And, you know, someone else's dashboard is also going to look they've got their own personal task board here, and then a similar tasks weekly flow here. So it can
you
yeah.
create, so can this dashboard have things from both the private and from the
Yes. So like only Zach sees his dashboard here, or this personal task, but then this is like the company-wide master task database.
And so does he access this via, does the dashboard itself live under workspace or under private?
That's up to the team members. Most people in this particular organization, everyone can see everyone else's spaces. So if someone wants to click into Zach's dashboard, they can see that. Right now, it's just inside of our projects. We have a project that's like creating the team dashboards. And so people can favorite these and they'll show up in the favorites.
Yeah.
The intention is that they have a private space where they can kind of, have their own private stuff and kind of mess around in here. And that's just like a free form. If he wants to like add a whole bunch of random notes down here in a really free form way, he can do that. And so everyone's can kind of look the way they want.
Cool.
Here's another example of like a project dashboard, because they're using the para method here. You can see projects, areas, resources, archives. But if I click on projects, that's a pretty big free for all of like, you almost have to like read it to find what you're looking for. What we're contemplating doing is creating a project dashboard. So breaking it down a little bit by topic, right? And having like a someday maybe area.
Yeah.
And doing something similar with areas. So again, this is the same database, but it's just filtered differently.
Yeah.
Based on what area. So there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of possibility for what you can do. And here you go, create new member dashboard, right? That's going to spin up a new one. And then here's the default. And there's little like, hey, this dashboard is meant to do X, Y, Z. And so you can build these little learning tools into it so that if you're starting up a new team member or starting up a new client, they kind of have a sense of what to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought it might be fun to show.
Yeah.
And they're like, 14 people on the team. So there's quite a few of them managing a lot of different stuff going on in here. And
I love that you can sort of experiment, because these databases and everything all mirror and are just extensions of themselves. You can experiment and you can make a mistake and you can change it and know that you can still keep the original intact if you need
totally.
to.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless. I just love it. Yeah, April was saying the database views, I think, it is the biggest game changer. Like just show me this view. Just show me my own tasks. Just show me my own personal tasks. It's the best. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you both for being so willing to show behind the scenes and show the planning and sort of, I know sometimes a lot of personal stuff that happens in our Notion spaces. And so thank you for being so generous and showing us kind of how you run things behind the scenes. Your content is always so inspiring. It's really amazing just to see how much intention you put into the whole conversations that you're having in business. So really, really appreciate it. And if anyone's curious about what the What Works Network is and Tara's podcast, amazing. We put a little call to action link at the bottom too to check out the What Works Network. I've been a member forever and I love it. I love it. Jonathan is in there. There's a lot of different people in the sidebar who are in that community. So, and where else can people find you online if people want to engage? What's the best way to I don't know, say hello? Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram's the best way to find me, chat with me, DM me. It's just Tara_McMullin. And I love talking to people on Insta. So come find me.
Amazing. We'll definitely follow up and send a link. Any of the links that were mentioned, any of the templates that were mentioned, we'll definitely follow up. And for anyone who's curious about the client management piece of that, definitely follow Notion on Crowdcast, because we will have future events and we will go way deeper into client management. We also have a session next week that's build with me. So if there's something specific that you don't know how to do, you want to build, I'm going to pull people up on screen and we're going to workshop your spaces. So if you're starting from scratch, or even if there's just like a really niche use case, you're like, how would I build this? Come along and join and we can do that together. So that should be really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Great.
So thank you
Marie.
so much for joining us. It was
Thanks,
really fun. Have
guys.
a great day, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.